thing that really, really touched me the most was when we went to India, to the slave port. Going to the slave port just absolutely changed my life because at that point I could actually see where my people had come from. And they talked to us about all of the suffering and everything that happened. And at that point, I knew that's good. I'm so happy that my family lived so that I could return and come home. I'm sorry, they call me Princess Crier, okay? Prince the Lord has absolutely shown us a lot of things, a lot of beautiful things. Princess Florence has opened her home to us, the whole family, and we really appreciate this. I can't express it any more than to say, I'm home. I can't ever go back to who I was. Never again. I can't see another Black person without realizing that this is my blood. And they've come from somewhere in Africa, and God knows I wish they could find where. Because once I found where I was, I know who I am, and I will never go back. I don't identify as being African American anymore. I'm African.
My journey basically started, my sister and I have been doing genealogy in our family for the past 15 years. Our family was brought up, I'll say a little bit different in the fact that I was always around African people. I thought that was normal. I didn't know, I thought everybody's home was decorated with masks and that, fetch water and things like that. When people look at me and they go like, how would you know what that's like? But where I lived at, that's what I had to do in order for me to bathe, in order for me to cook. But I was curious to know, I know I'm African, but I want to know what tribe, what country. So we did the African ancestry for my mother's side, and it was determined we're Bamiléké from Cameroon. And also I do have Nigerian as well, so I love my Nigerian people. and, and also Ethiopian and Egypt. But once I found that out, I wanted to visit the country, but I really I didn't know anybody from there, but someone who was in the group, One Tikar, One People, introduced me to Delore, and I said, well, let me see what this is about, because I'm not someone who's into Facebook groups and stuff like that, but I saw how successful they were with doing projects where they were putting up wells in schools, and I was like, that's something I want to be a part of. I want to be able to give back in some kind of a way, but I also want to go back to this country. So the first trip we went, and I could say the moment that I stepped off of that plane, I felt something go up my leg. It was like a shock. And I was just like, oh wow, like what was that? And then when I touched the soil, the soil has some kind of like a vibration or energy that's not here in the States. You're not going to experience that anywhere but on the continent. So when we went, just to be around the people, the culture, I felt like Linda said, I felt like this is where I'm supposed to be at. So I have gone back a few times by myself to Cameroon because I love the country. I've also been to Nigeria, which I love there too, and Ghana. But what I'll say is, as Linda and Herman said, they're not going to teach us what we're supposed to know because it's not a priority. So you have to educate yourself. But my thing is, I never once had a negative concept because no one can tell me anything. I don't care what they say about Africa. There's nothing that they can tell me because I know the majority of it is lies. So anyone who says something to me negatively, I just say, you know, what's your problem? Do you want some wahala or what? Like, you know, what do you want? You know, like I'm not here to play with you. I'm here to slaughter you. So what do you want to do? You know, but I would definitely say being with the group One Tikar, One People has also opened us that we get to meet everybody. This is just like an open family barbecue. We all get to talk, we get to meet with each other. And I could say thank you everybody, not just for coming here, but that that you're giving me the opportunity to get to be with you and to know you. And I thank you for coming.
My intent today is to get us kickstarted on more discussions about what we can do together. It's the first step that you guys have all accepted to be here today, that you've taken the time to know who you are, not only to gather the knowledge, but to actually travel or want to travel to go find out more. You are on a journey that isn't like many journey, but it's a journey that was expected to be. It's a journey that was planned 400 years ago when the unfortunate encounters of different civilizations clashed and brought us all here in this very moment. So your return, it's going to be, in my opinion, one of the great events that will define the future of the world. So I very much appreciate you. What I plan to share with you then is what is ahead of us. And I'm going to propose a few ways of thinking how we use our time together and provide what I hope is a different paradigm or a lens view by which we examine our common heritage and how we address the challenges ahead of us. So the themes that I will share with you today is entitled Strategic Alliance, because we come from different backgrounds. For many of us, we've been separated for over 400 years. We have different cultures. We've evolved different habits, and we have different positions of opportunity. So bringing our hands together can yield great power. Second slide, please. In that strategic alliance, the first thing that I want us to recall and see is our economic advantage. To give you some numbers, they may seem boring and it's hard, it's a bit an eyesore for you to see, but I'll read it for you. The African diaspora economic power is estimated by the World Bank to be around $53 billion. That's a lot of economic power. That's enough money to change different government, to change politics, to change the way the world is run. If we can bring our mind and our thinking together. In 2040, just as an example, Africa is expected to have a larger workforce than China and India. That's a lot. If you understand the reason why most things are manufactured in China is simply because they have a large workforce. 1 billion people is a lot larger of a number than 300 million that the US has, and so they can build manufacturers. So in projections of the future is running in the future current is running in a direction in which you are all standing. Lastly, for many Africans or people of African descent, the amount of money that they send back in Africa to help support the economy, develop those economy, do a lot of the same work that you guys have all been doing by building wells and building schools, supporting orphanages, adds up to a lot. The last figures from 2019 was $48 billion. Just wrap your mind around that, $48 billion. It's a lot of money. It's a real testimony that many of you are still connected to home. Despite all the negative messages that you've heard, despite the negative publicities, we are still doing our part to support back home. Next slide, please. The next advantage we have, that is another pillar in which we can build our strategic alliance, is geographical advantage. The unfortunate events of the past position us in ways that are actually advantageous to us. Africans are spread across the many continents. Yes, it wasn't always by their own willing, sure, but it's put us in a position that is quite advantageous. Just some small figures here, about 39 millions in North America. Latin America, three times as much, is estimated, over 100 million. And in the Caribbean, about 13 millions, and in Europe, in various countries, about 3 millions. That is quite a large population. And, when you add up the sheer numbers, they make up over half of US population, right? Just kind of spread out across the world. It's a great strategic advantage. You can, if you just imagine that many people putting their mind and their voice in one single direction and changing we could change political events in the future in just one swoop. Great advantage we have. And I took a quote here from someone that I read. Her name is Amini Kaminju of the African American Institute. She said, diasporans can help dispel myths and stereotypes about Africa to change the narrative about our continent. And this is a great point, because one of the biggest barriers that Africa has are exactly this myth that have been propelled and spread around for the last 400 years. When the European encountered Africa and decided to create slavery, they had to come up with an excuse, right? They had to make you less of a human. They have to say you were less of a culture. They had to say you were less intelligent. They needed to come with some justification so they wouldn't feel guilty about simultaneously telling you had to be Christian. There had to be a justification. So those stories, those myths, have been propagated for 400 years. Today, in order for us to succeed, we need to start breaking them down. Many of us have great powers. We have access to media, right? We have access to various platforms to communicate messages, to tell our own friends and family about what we know. And your trips in Africa are really a great beginning for that, to see firsthand what's true, to start dispelling those myths. Next page, please. To cover the geographical advantage, I put together sort of a quick map to just show where Black people are in large numbers. And what you'll quickly see is, with the exceptions of Asia, we cover most of the world, right? And not in small numbers, relatively large numbers. And this is a great power. And in terms of numbers, again, 15% of Africans are in the diaspora, right? Again, a large number. Of those 15%, about 70% of the diplomatic influence and media influence reside outside. And it's reside with people like us here, right? Who have access to media, again, as we spoke of earlier. And the economic power also reside with us. The large number we talked about, 48 billion, is quite a bit, represent about 50% of that economic power of Africans. So quite powerful. Next slide, please. So meanwhile, one of the largest contributions that I believe mostly African Americans have done to the world has been the civil rights movement. Almost every non-white person in this world owes their presence on the American soil to the civil rights movement. Why? Because the civil rights movement changed immigration laws. Immigration laws prior to the civil rights movement were very focused, were very Eurocentric, right? It was mostly go to Europe and bring Europeans. This is the lens in which it was viewed. Wasn't it for the civil rights movement, I wouldn't be here. If you are Asian, you wouldn't be here. If you are from whatever non-white Arab, you wouldn't be here, because that's not how immigrations were set up before then. So in that debt of gratitude, the numbers over time has started to show an increase of African-borns in the US. And the stats that I show here, again, very hard for you guys to see, it shows almost a year-over-year increase of about 10%, right, on African-born. And this is through family reunifications and through many other means of immigrations. What that does for many of us here is that it creates an opportunity for us to meet together as we're doing today. It creates an opportunity to create those bridges back to Africa, right? It creates an opportunity for many of you who have been separated for 400 years to rekindle your culture, right, and your sense of self. Next slide. So what can you do then? So now that we've come together and we know that we have all of these advantages, what can you do, right? So what you do first is what we're already doing. Can you find means to connect back, right? I think the law and my great excitement of being here today was just looking at what you've been doing to set up a structure to bring all of us here together, right? To support people back home, to allow you to reconnect with yourself. I think it's one of the greatest steps, right, of that healing. And next slide. The second part, and this part may seem a bit light, but it's very important. That is, enjoy the culture. So when you came here today, I've seen many of you guys sampling the food, discovering different types, right? One of the beauty about the food you're eating is that by and large they are organic. They have been injected with a lot of the chemicals, a lot of the preservatives, and what they are also is that they mesh very well with your own genetic evolution. We all grew up in a particular environment with special type of diets over millennia, right? And for me, just to give you a simple example, many of us are lactose intolerant, and this is due to just that evolution over time. In the environment in which you grew up, your diet was rich in certain type of nutrients, and lactose just wasn't one of those. Right? Genetically, you evolved in that way. And so just your way of rekindling yourself, reconnecting yourself to diet, enjoying this time we have here, learning more about the meal, the dishes, right? Get some recipe, connect with people. This is a great step that connects you back. And who knows what can come out of it. The next McDonald's might just be one of those dishes back there. It's an opportunity to build on. The other thing that you can do, and I strongly encourage you, is to involve yourself in understanding international politics. We've all seen what's happened recently in Afghanistan, the fiasco that unraveled before our eyes. All of those things are international politics at play, right? Those are strategic positioning. The US has to play for its interest. We also have to play for our interest. If we know that home is somewhere in Africa, what are we doing to play our strategic positioning such that the interests of Africans are also protected? In order for you to do that, it's important to know international policies, right? What's happening? One of the simple ways that the US got very involved in Africa is in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where they have a lot of minerals. We are today driving electric cars, but a lot of minerals come from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Political influence, so they can get it cheap, right? Have you educated yourself to understand what are the means by which they're influencing the politics in that country, as an example? The same is true for Cameroon, when France, through their relationship with the UN, also exploit minerals in Cameroon for dirt cheap. We have the access here through just knowledge to influence those politics. So in gathering ourselves together, let's think of ways through education to then influence those politics so we can better the life of those back home. Again, finally, to repeat perhaps one of the easiest part, if we could go next slide. Next one. Yeah, to repeat again, one of the easiest ways for us to support ourselves is please enjoy the culture. You've seen the mask, you've seen the representation, you've seen the clothing, you've seen the food. Connect yourself with it, right? Try to make it, maybe it's one of the meals out there that I particularly enjoy was the greens, right? Maybe make it a Friday, a meals for every Friday or something like that, right? Connect yourself with home. Just some points for me. Thank you very much.